that they're going to shut the lights off on me. And now it's so that we get to test whether or not I can keep you awake. Fascinatingly, we spend lots of time talking about business. And we spend a chunk of time talking about pharmacotherapy and all of those kinds of things. And I think that one of the things that we don't talk so much about, and I'm going to go so far as to say the world doesn't talk so much about, is actually the ethical part of our behavior. And so when we look at the code of ethics adopted by this association, there's a really interesting phrase locked in the middle, and that is without fear or favor. And I think that that's going to give us some challenges, but also some amazing opportunities, right? So my goal is when we're done chatting, and please feel free to chat. Y'all know me, or most of you do, so you know that I can talk for 3.5 hours. And cool, they're not stopping the tape at 2, so I may just keep on going. But if you have a question, please ask. But we're going to talk about that phrase, and we're going to talk about what that means in our world. And I hope, my goal is that when this is done, you can look in the mirror, look at your friend and say, I really do feel sort of an increased purpose in what I do and in how I do it. For this association's code of ethics, there is a statement that says, a pharmacy technician does not engage in any activity that will discredit the profession and will expose without fear or favor illegal or unethical conduct in the profession. I gotta tell you, I have read hundreds of codes of ethics. This may be the highest bar I have ever seen. And I think that that's fascinating, that your profession chose to do this. And I want to explore it, and I want to applaud it, right? Because we're going to break it apart. And then when we get all done, we're going to put it back together. Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot of feedback, from the mic.
Okay.
From, the movement.
I think I know how to do that. Let's try that. Is that better? We'll find out. If it's not, jump up and we'll do it again, okay? Perfect. A pharmacy technician does not engage in any activity that will discredit the profession. Wow. But you know what? I'm going to embrace that one. It is super vital in today's world that we understand that when we walk in the door of the pharmacy, we're not becoming a professional, and when we walk out of the door of the pharmacy, that goes away. This is any activity. That sort of means anywhere. And that really is important, I think, to all of us in a world where people sadly stereotype. If we look at these 3 photos, we see one that, I don't know if any of you have ever seen me drive, but yeah. So, I have to be careful. Would me doing this with a big sign on my car that said, oh, by the way, I'm a pharmacist. I don't have one of those. But would that discredit my profession? Maybe. If somebody knew what I did for a living, I think certainly. Then we see that group in the middle that is clearly working hard to bring credit to their profession. This happens to be all students of healthcare. So there are nurses here, there are pharmacy students here, there are med students here. The young woman in the back, clearly wearing scrubs, is one of the pharmacy technicians that worked at this particular facility. They are bringing pride to all of their professions, as opposed to doing something that would discredit them. And we don't need to say anything about the man on the right other than, ugh. Right? But when we look at a code of ethics that says, in your life, you will not discredit us. You will make life choices that lead to our credit. I think it's cool that we have that middle photo of folks who are doing exactly that. And then we've got a couple of examples of, oh my. And then this statement goes on, and it says, a pharmacy technician will expose, without fear or favor, illegal or unethical conduct in the profession. Not should expose, not we recommend it. No. This statement says will. No ifs, no ands, no buts. Now, I know that some of you work in states where you have a legal requirement to report certain things. Others of you do not. The requirements vary not only between jurisdictions, but between professions in the jurisdictions and all of those kinds of things. The implication of this particular ethical standard is that other ethical people will not retaliate against the whistleblower. Kind of cool, yesterday was National Whistleblower Celebration Day. And it mostly deals with fraud and saying, hey, I think something skeevy is going on here and I wanted y'all to know. But not always. It can be a number of different things. And I think it's cool that your association has chosen to say, don't be afraid, do the right thing. And trust that those who must also do the right thing are going to be there. At least they're not going to retaliate. And then there's that legal piece. And we need to understand, and we will talk about laws and ethics in a little bit, but they're not exactly the same. Without fear or favor. Now, I don't know if your board of directors has been asked or if you have an ethics board, but I don't know if this says don't expect a reward, or if it goes so far as to say if you are offered a reward, you may not accept it. And the folks who crafted the ethic are going to have to chat with you because, right, it's your code of ethics, not the world's, yours. And I suspect that the intent was that you should not request a reward. I also suspect it doesn't go so far as to prohibit, but I'm not your ethicist. I am the ethicist for a couple of organizations, but not yours. And understand that the ultimate goal was doing the right thing is the right thing to do. And that's enough. And that's a really interesting concept when you think about it, right? That I am going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I don't need any other impetus. That's how professional people act. And that's how, when you are following your own code of ethics, that you act. I love this theme. I love meant to shine. If I haven't told you, once upon a time, I was not a bad pharmacist. And then the world changed. And we got into technology, and we got into third-party payors, and I could no more run a pharmacy today than the man in the moon. I'm still not a bad pharmacist. But I'd like to think that I'm not a bad pharmacist because I have an incredible team that surrounds me. You understand, I think, that the system would fall apart without you, right? I mean, it just wouldn't happen. But meant to shine is so much more. There is truly nothing that brings me more joy than shining lights toward the people who I work with who do amazing things. There's an admin in our academic department. Oh my God. If she quits, I quit, because I can't do it, right? There's a woman that works on licensing at our state board of health. And I have said, I'm not really excited about retiring, but damn, Vonda, if you ever retire, I'm going right after you, because you're the person who makes me look good. And some of you have heard the story about the unfortunate patient who came into the pharmacy where I was working and made my technician cry. And I said to him, you can come back tomorrow and pick up this prescription. And he's like, no, I'm here, I'll pick it up now. And I'm like, no, see, you won't, because I'm not selling it to you. Well, you have to sell it to me, it's mine. No, funny thing. Until I sell it to you, it's mine. And you made my technician cry, and I'm not going to help you today. So we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye. Well, I want to talk to the manager. Why don't you do that? So the manager came back and said, what's going on? And I said, I'm not filling this prescription for this particular gentleman because he made my technician cry. And he hasn't apologized. And furthermore, and he's like, okay, I'm sorry. I said, no, see, even I didn't believe that. So we'll see you tomorrow. Well, and I'm like, or I could just put it back. And it won't be here tomorrow either. And I think that's what you do for the folks that you work with. And it doesn't matter what position they are in. If we aren't a team, we aren't anything in healthcare. Not anymore. We used to be a mountain. We used to say, I am supreme. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. And when we talk about ethical constructs, there are really these 6. And we're going to focus on a couple of them. But you know them, you've learned them, you've grasped them. Beneficence is acting for the good of the patient. I think we always try to do that. Non-maleficence, a little bit more difficult in our world. But if we think of it first as preventing evil, and secondly is preventing harm, certainly we can prevent evil, right? We're going to follow HIPAA. We're not going to do really nasty things. Preventing harm is tough, particularly when we are dispensing anti-neoplastics that make them nauseous or their hair falls out, or we're doing whatever, right? We understand that side effects are, but they're never intentional harm. Autonomy, this one's tough. What it says is the patient has the right to make their own decision as long as they don't hurt anybody else. And it's the as long as they don't hurt anybody else that we are seeing folks have a little trouble comprehending, right? We understand that patients get to make their own decisions, and that because of that ethical construct, there is no such thing as a bad patient. Oh, she's a terrible patient. She only takes one of these every 3 days and it's ordered. No. She has autonomy. As long as she's not hurting anybody else, it is what it is. Now, we also understand that if you are taking a sleeping tablet, we would prefer you not drive. That's where your autonomy comes up against my beneficence, right? So you can't make decisions that hurt somebody else, but you get to make decisions for yourself. And we need to remember always when we are thinking about without fear, without favor, this is how we treat people. Justice says that patients are treated equitably, and I actually have a graphic that I think is really important on this one. Fidelity is faithfulness. If I make a promise to you, I'm going to break my back to keep it. And then veracity, or of course, truthfulness. And when we are looking at ethic, a code of ethics, there are folks who will then say, but it's also a code of conduct. Usually, true statement. I mean, I think there are some times when we have other things. If I want you to do something, I am not a member of your profession. If I want to make sure that you do something, I can ask for a law that says you have to do it. I can ask for a rule that says you have to do it. I can get myself into a management position and I can flat out tell you to do it. But that is from me to you. Even if we've worked together to craft the law or to craft the rule or to craft the policy, it's still not from the folks who do what you do. Courts are asked to compare what's legal and what's not. And if there's no breach of law, you usually don't get to court. But then they are also asked, and how would this compare to standard of care anywhere else? And my students, and perhaps some of you, are really good at saying, well, standard of care are simple, basic things like every patient diagnosed with diabetes gets placed on metformin. Y'all know that. Goodness gracious, you order it in jugs that when they're empty is big enough to put up pickles, right? So you got that. But standard of care, if a code of ethics exists, also means, did you follow it? So while ethics are not codified, that is, no state senator ever votes on them, right? It never goes to the federal Congress. It doesn't come down from CMS. It's actually rougher than that. It comes from you. You, as a group, decided this is how we want to control ourselves. And furthermore, because we are calling it a code of ethics, we have a duty of fidelity. This is the promise we're making. We're going to keep it. And suddenly we look at this document and these statements as something alive. It's our partner in saying this is how we act. And the way yours is crafted, it actually says this is how I live my life. Not just this is how I do my job. Which is helpful, I think, in some cases, a little scary, perhaps, in others. When we look at the definition of profession, it's an occupation founded on a specialized educational training, you have that, the purpose of which is to supply disinterested, objective counsel and service to others. And it's okay if you make money doing it, but that's not your ultimate goal. We don't mind you get paid. We don't mind you get paid well. But when you are part of a profession, you're doing what you're doing to serve others. Otherwise, it's just a job. And that's different. And we know that creating a code of ethics is one of those things that like-minded people who are providing the same education-required service do to say, we are professionals. We do what we do to help others. But also when you look at the definition of professional, it says that it is disinterested and objective service to others. Now, that doesn't mean you don't care. It's not that kind of disinterest. It means that you grasp, this isn't about you. What you would do isn't the issue. You are serving patients with autonomy. And to serve patients with autonomy means that you do what they want you to do if you can. Not what you would want. Not what this is about. It's disinterested and objective service to others. The objective piece means it's a good decision. It's a legal decision. It is the patient, if they're going to make what you personally consider to be not a great choice, at least they've got all the facts. Patients don't do things that they believe will hurt them, right? They make decisions based on what they understand and what they believe is the best choice. If you've given them all the facts and they don't believe what you believe, that's where we are. And that's a really tough concept. When I want them to do something, if they don't want to too, the patient wins. That's ethical behavior. And ethics are actually a choice. Ethics turn a job into a profession. Ethics say this isn't all about me. My advice, even in the economy of 2021, is if it comes down to ethics or your job, pick your ethics. You can find another job. You may or may not be able to recover your reputation. But more than that, everybody else who works with you will be duty bound to report your ethical breach. That's part of your code. Duty bound, not legally bound, duty bound. And that is a duty to your profession of like-minded professionals. If it comes down to your ethics or your job, pick your ethics. The one I wanted to talk about, the one that we are really struggling with as a country and frankly as a world, is the ethical construct of justice. Healthcare practitioners, and you belong on a team, have to allocate goods and services in an equitable manner. And when we're thinking about healthcare, we're thinking about scarce resources, right? Man, I so hoped that we wouldn't have to still have this conversation. You have 10 patients who can't breathe, you have 5 ventilators. You have 12 beds in the COVID unit, and you have 17 admits. You have 3 million doses of vaccine, and 200,000 of those will expire next week. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody is going to get this resource and somebody isn't. That's what's going to happen. And equity is we make the best decision for everybody. Equality there on the left, oh yeah, we're just going to put them all in a box. Well, tall dude doesn't need it and little dude didn't get any help from his single box. Equity says, hey, everybody wants to watch this play. So little dude gets 2 boxes. Tall dude gets none. Because that's the right thing to do. And when we think about equity, equity impacts our social decisions and our economic decisions and sometimes our religious decisions. Patients do have a right to be treated fairly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be treated equally. Tall dude didn't need a box. He doesn't need me to be fair to him. Little guy needed a box. Couldn't see the game. We did the right thing. That's equitable. That's justice. And honestly, justice is not about fair. It's about thinking about everybody else and who needs what and who will benefit the most from us. To be fair, everybody please climb this tree. Wait, what? Elephants don't climb trees, and dogs don't, and penguins don't, and fish don't, and what? That's not fair. But more than that, it's not equitable. Unless our goal is tree climbing is going to save the world, and I suspect that's probably not true, right? But you're also asked to do something without fear or favor. When you have obvious unethical conduct, you have been asked to expose it. Interesting word, expose it. So you will need to know whom to expose it to. Is it a reportable thing? Do you have to tell the state or the state patrol? Do you have to tell the DEA? Do you have to tell your boss? You have to tell your shift manager. I mean, who are you exposing this to? And a great deal of that decision will be, was it unethical or unethical and illegal? Because that would be icky. But one of the questions that you have to ask yourself is, was it intentional? Because an intentional act is different than an unintentional one. People can do unethical things because they didn't know any better, not necessarily out of malice. You still need to expose it, but in this case, maybe you're exposing it to them. Maybe you're saying, did you know this action, this statement, this inaction was unethical? Let's work our way through that. And you will get a variety of response, all right? You have to verify that the bad actor knows what's wrong. There are times when folks do things that they don't understand. They use language and they don't understand where it came from, so they don't understand that it's offensive. Or it may be offensive to you and not to me. Doesn't occur to me. We do silly things like ask our Muslim students to take a test at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of Ramadan when they haven't had anything to eat or drink for 13 hours. Well, that is not equitable. But if you don't know, you can't fix it, right? And so sometimes the exposing is simply explaining to the person who messed up, you messed up. Let me help you work on this. Modeling appropriate behavior is super important when we talk about the ethical issues of biases. The ethical issues of microaggressions. I have a couple of real lives for you. Muslim student is working in your pharmacy. Muslim student is there the week between Palm Sunday and Easter. And the pharmacist says, wow, you're here during the most holy week of the year. Don't you think? Did the pharmacist intend to screw up? No, probably not. Just didn't think about it. Some of you are saying, well, the pharmacist was right. That is the most holy week of the year. Others of you are saying, why would you say that at work? Some of you are thinking, so what? Water off a duck's back. Pull up your big girl panties and deal with it, right? But the issue is you don't get to do that because your code of ethics says you're going to expose this. And probably you're not going to call out the pharmacist in front of a whole bunch of other people, but when you get that moment, you're going to say, that just doesn't pass the smell test. It just doesn't. You may have hurt the student's feelings. It wasn't important to the work we were doing. Can I help? If you want to say you're sorry, that's okay. If you don't, you want me to tell the student that we're sorry? How do you want to handle that? And that's enough. That's enough exposure. Right, your code of ethic, thank goodness, does not mandate that you escalate stuff. It just says you expose it. And certainly there are those global unethical pharmacy things, and doggone it, these always make the front page of the paper, and we always look like doofuses, right? People who commit fraud, billing for things that didn't happen. That's why yesterday was National Whistleblower Appreciation Day. But we also do unethical things that we don't think about. Your copay for $100 is $3. So if you give me $3 today, we really only have 80, but we'll give you 20 tomorrow. No, that's fraud. Well, but tomorrow it won't be fraud. Not true. It's still fraud. You just lucked out. And with your code of ethics, it's not only you can't do that, it's you have to expose it to somebody. You have to say, this isn't right. It's not okay. Can't do it. Dishonesty, always unethical. Veracity is one of your standards. No, I'm sorry, we don't have any. By golly, you better not. And we have all been in the situation where the patient comes in, you don't want to fill the prescription, rather than face the problem. I'm concerned about this dose, and I'm concerned about the number of benzodiazepines that you've been taking lately, and I don't want to fill this. That's the right thing to do. Sorry, we're out. Can't fill it. By God, you better be out. Because lying to the patient's not okay. Protecting them, not giving them the benzo, that's not the problem. In fact, that's a good thing. Beneficence, non-maleficence. But lying to them, not okay. And you wouldn't want somebody to lie to you. But more than that, perhaps, if somebody screwed up their courage and said, we're really worried about the number of these that you're taking. Maybe today you saved a life instead of lying to a patient and violating your ethics and doing all kinds of awful things that you don't want to do. Certainly, you will experience discrimination and bias. You may experience it personally. You may see it happen. If it happens in the profession, which is what your code of ethics is, You have to do something. Expose it. Point it out. And wow, is it going to be? You hear discriminatory comments. You see abject disrespect. Occasionally, I think you probably even see patients get lesser care. Remember, not all social determinants of health have to do with finances. We talk about patients who can't afford, and then whatever it is that we're arguing about today. The price of insulin. Well, yeah, but I got patients who can't afford. Right, get that. I have patients who just take half every day because they can't afford. That's one of the social determinants of health, right? Sadly, so is the color of your skin, the higher being that you choose to worship, sometimes your gender, sometimes whether or not you have access to bathe. Doesn't matter how much insulin costs if you have no electricity to keep it cool. It really doesn't. You can have $1 million. And if you can't keep it cool, it's still not going to work. Right? And so when we look at discrimination and bias, I am not asking you to solve the problems of the world. That's not it. But it is true that within your profession and within our combined workspaces, we all have an ethical duty to call these things out, to expose them, so that we can make a difference. I'm a little embarrassed, but the next two are also real cases. There is a pharmacy where the staff refers to a transgender patient as shim, because that's a really clever blend of she and him. And it kind of makes me want to throw up. What are you going to do if you hear that? What a horrible position to be in, especially if some knothead says it and some second knothead giggles. Then you get to be the heavy and the bad guy to two people. But this is not okay. And you know that. Ew. And it does not matter if the patient hears it or not. This isn't about the patient. It's about the environment at this point. What on earth would have gotten into somebody's head that they would think that that was okay? Got to be exposed without fear or favor. Another pharmacy. I got to work at this one, okay? There's a note in the computer about this particular patient that says, if she arrives as a woman, please call her Emily. If, however, he comes to the pharmacy as a man, he prefers to be called Samuel. Okay. My patient gets to maintain their autonomy. And more than that, one of my colleagues was nice enough to give me the instructions on making sure that the patient was comfortable. Because I probably would have stepped in it, right? This is a special circumstance that I was not terribly familiar with. If she is at my counter, her name is Emily. If he is at my counter, his name is Samuel. The fact that they happen to inhabit the same body is not my problem. Taking care of this patient is my issue. Where would I rather work? Oh, there's no doubt that I would much prefer to work in the second pharmacy, but I think so would you. If you work with people that work that hard to respect someone's dignity, I think it's reasonable to expect that they're going to work that hard to respect yours. What a cool place to work. And I will think for the most part, now, you're looking at an academic, right? And I teach advocacy. So I talk about some of this stuff at work, but not about my personal feelings. But probably commentary on politics, religion, identity, that just doesn't belong at work. Telling me that if she appears as a woman, she's Emily, and if he appears as a man, he's Samuel, isn't commenting necessarily. It's given me some guidance, and it's helping a lot. You are 100% welcome to have an opinion. And if we're going to work in the same space, you're 100% welcome to check that opinion at the door. And I will check mine at the door. And every once in a while, we get one of those weird management things that says, like, we want you to wear the team colors on Saturday. Oh, what if that's not my team? What if that's not the team that my patients cheer for? Okay, I'll wear the color, but I won't wear the logo. Can we agree on that? Maybe. Why are we doing this? Why do we have to draw curbs and why do we have to? But I'm 100% welcome to have an opinion. If you care, I'm a Raiders fan. And I'm 100% welcome to check it at the door. You should never hear about my football team while we're working. I might tell you in the break room or the parking lot. Because, man, I've been a Raiders fan my whole life. But it doesn't belong in my workplace. I will remind you that breaking the law is a bad idea. Probably not something I had to tell you. Do remember that in some jurisdictions, it's illegal not to report when the law has been broken. Illegal not to report. And if you want to get into a super PhD level discussion, it is possible to be illegal and not unethical. I don't want to go there. Your eyes will cross and you'll be like, But remember that the reason for that reporting is different. The reason that we expose an ethical breach is to make us better and to make us more unified. The reason that we expose a legal breach is because most of those laws exist for patient safety. And the state simply does not have the bandwidth to notice everything that has gone on. So they are, in fact, asking for the help of professionals who can recognize that. Mandatory reporting, for the most part, is a really good idea. Certainly, we know that in order to be guilty of unprofessional conduct, you have to be a professional. I mean, that seems really silly, but what we're looking at here is a law that says you may be disciplined for unprofessional conduct. Well, that means you're a profession. And I think that's the right answer. I think you are. And you have built a code of ethics that says you are. And that you have imposed on yourself standards that society did not impose on you. That means you're a professional. So certainly, in most jurisdictions, you are subject to unprofessional conduct laws. I think that's where you want to be, actually. The guy at the taco place, that checks the tacos out the drive-through window, maybe your best friend, especially if you work the overnight shift, but the reality is there isn't a taco chuckers union, and they're not a profession, and they don't have, right? And you can think of other jobs, some essential, that aren't professions. because they don't require the specialized education, because they are not disinterested, because they are not using science or being objective and caring for someone else. But you are. You are a vital part of the drug distribution team. Please don't ever forget that, because we truly would fall apart without you. And then every once in a while you have some state that's a little bit old and hasn't rewritten the laws that wants you to provide proof of good moral character. I'm not even sure what that means. No, I'm not. Doggone it. I mean, I know that there are things that are immoral, but so you get a letter from a friend that says, yeah, I think this is a good person, and you mail it to the state, and they're like, oh, cool. Somebody thinks you're a good person. That's not ethics. That's something different. And it's actually probably very antiquated. Maybe a little prejudice, but we're not even going to go there. I think that made to shine, showing off your profession, following this incredibly rigid code of conduct or code of ethics. You're professionals, so walk the talk. Don't tell people you're professionals, show them. We would fall apart without you. Show them that you're professionals. I insist that the technicians working with me are treated professionally by everybody. I believe, right? Those folks walk the talk. They act like professionals, they get treated like professionals, and by golly, if you think it's okay not to, stay out my way. You do not want to ever pick on my children, ever. You do not ever want to pick on my grandchildren. And you never want to pick on the people who are on my work team. Now, my children and my grandchildren, not the professional thing, it's just really, come on, don't mess with my kids. But when it's my work team, then you're messing with me. Even if it's not direct, it's indirect. In every syllabus that I write, it says, if you are rude to my administrative staff, you will fail this class, and it is not challengeable. So my administrative support knows. Somebody walks into her office and is mean, she writes down that Joe Smith was rude, Joe Smith gets an F and gets to pay another year's worth of tuition because there's nothing Joe can do about it. Don't pick on my people, right? So walk that talk. Do it. It matters so much. Every day, show us your professionalism. Every moment, expose those things that need exposure and understand that the vast majority of them are done because I didn't know better, not because I'm a malicious fool. I'm just foolish. And do it without fear or favor. And it will be better. So now let's put it all back together after we blew it all up. A pharmacy technician does not engage in any activity that will discredit the profession and will expose, without fear or favor, illegal or unethical conduct in the profession. Do remember, this is your code of ethics. You haven't written it for anybody else. So you can say, well, Allie, you're a pharmacist. Why didn't you? Well, because maybe it wasn't in my code. I don't know that you can expect that anybody else that you work with is going to have a code that is identical to yours. They'll be similar, right? Don't hurt people, don't lie, right? But you have chosen as a profession to say, don't embarrass us ever. And if something's going on that's not quite perfect, tell somebody. And perhaps the person who just didn't know any better is the best place to start. But you may have to do something more than that. And wow, if you're talking about your moment to shine, that has to be it, right? I mean, that's incredible that this code of ethics with this level of responsibility has been chosen by your profession. My goal was to give you 10 minutes for questions. I didn't quite make it, but we have 7. If there are any questions I would be honored to answer, please let me thank you for inviting me to be with you today.